Okay. All right. Let me just go quick over this.
Shall I record this one as well?
Pardon?
Shall I record the Spanish one?
Oh, yeah, you should. So I'm just going to go quickly over this again.
Voy a empezar esto nuevamente.
We can hear you. So I'm going to go quickly over this again so that we can have it on the recording. We are a state association, like many Head Start associations across the country. Started when Head Start started in the 60s, and then when ECAP joined us in 1986, we became a nonprofit, and we are the only state in the country who has an association that includes both our state Head Start program and our state preschool program. And all of these programs pay dues to us so that they support our work. In many states, the state association is a lot smaller. We have, we now have 4 people on staff. So I would say that we are one of the biggest state Head Start associations in the whole country. And we don't get to fund all of that through our dues. We also get grants. And so that's the way that we support parent ambassadors. And then we also do events, and we get money through that as well. So, so that is the work. That's the way that we operate. We are, WSA is the larger organization, and Parent Ambassadors is a project within our advocacy mission underneath the state association. Are there any questions about that before I move on? Oops. No. All right, so who do we represent as an association? Right now there are 14,000 children enrolled in ECAP, a little over 8,000 in Head Start, 3,400 in Early Head Start, 1,300 in American Indian / Alaska Native Head Start programs, and then about 2,800 in migrant seasonal Head Start programs. Many of our programs operate both Head Start and ECAP. They also operate other programs like home visiting, and they often have childcare associated with them, and they have other food programs, or they might be part of a larger organization that does other work with low-income families. And so we also, because we represent all of those programs and the families within them, our advocacy at WSA is not just about Head Start and ECAP and Early Head Start. It is really about those things, and also all the things that are important to the children and families and staff that are members of the association. So it's because of that that we advocate on childcare a lot, and we advocate around immigration and TANF and food stamps and all those kinds of things, because the families that we serve, we very much try to have them drive our advocacy. Just like, so not all of you are in Head Start or ECAP, but if you are, then you have a policy council and you have a governing board. We also have a governing board, and it is made up of parents, staff, and directors of ECAP and Head Start and Early Head Start programs from around the state. It's an election process. Many of you have seen this happen at WSA meetings in the fall and in the winter, where we where you have to submit an application and speak in front of the entire membership at that meeting, and then there is an election of the people who are in the room. We have several past parent ambassadors on our board right now, and that is pretty common over the last few years. But the trick is that you can't serve on the board until your parent ambassador year has ended, or very close. And the reason for that is conflict of interest. So you as a parent ambassador are, the relationship that we have is that we, we are working with you to train, we're partnering on advocacy, we are, you are part of a program that we're doing. But the board is deciding our budget and they are supervising us. So until you are not part of parent ambassadors, you cannot supervise us. So so that is the way that works. Is there any questions about the board of directors? All right. We have 4 staff at WSA. Joel is our executive director. I'm the deputy director. April is our parent ambassador manager. The 3 of us are full-time, and then Scarlett is our administrative assistant, and she is part-time. And then, as part of this project, we have some staff as well who are more contracted staff. Lori Pittman is our project director. Sonia and Maricela are our parent coordinators. Moving. So what do we do? This is sort of that goes back to that mission. The 3 things that we do as WSA are advocacy, collaboration, and training. So on the advocacy end, we try to be a very strong voice in Washington, D.C. and in Olympia as our legislators decide what to do about how they're serving low-income children and families and other families who are farthest from opportunity. The big thing about parent ambassadors, oh, maybe I'll get to that one. So yeah, that's our advocacy arm, and we do a lot of both federal and state advocacy. And I'm sure that we have this scheduled at some point, but we will have a conversation about what is federal and what is state, and how do we know what to where to go to do our advocacy, and how can we be the most effective as parents when we advocate for our programs. So I'm sure that's coming up at some point in the next couple of months. We do training. We have a lot of events over the course of the year. We have the WSA meetings in the fall and the winter, which you guys will be attending if they still exist. We have 2 different directors meetings. We have a summer institute, which you guys will be at, but there usually are another 200, 250 people there doing staff training at the same time. We have an infant toddler conference that is, I think, about to be moved online because of the coronavirus. We have an annual parent leadership conference. All of those things are separate from parent ambassadors. We also do some webinars, and we do some special trainings that we bring people in for, especially for directors or especially for financial people or whatever it is. Any question about that?
Katie, can you mention again which are the events that you will have? I missed one of them. I have the winter and fall, the Parent Institute, and I missed the other one. Can you repeat?
Infant Toddler Conference and the Summer Institute. And I would also say that this piece, this advocacy thing, you know, a lot of the advocacy that we do is direct advocacy to legislators, right? Where you guys are visiting your legislators or you're social distancing and emailing your legislators, or you are you're doing something direct, right? You are contacting them and or the governor or your congressman or something, and you are asking for something. But we also do a lot of administrative advocacy, and that fits into this as well. And what that means is that, you know, when the legislature or the Congress passes something, you know, they pass a big bill, and then it goes down to the department. In the state, it's the Department of Children, Youth, and Families, and on the federal level, it's the Office of Head Start. And then they write a lot of rules about how that thing is going to be implemented. And often, it requires that people out in the world, parents and us and directors of programs and teachers and childcare people, need to really work to influence the way that laws get implemented, because they don't always have a good idea of how things are. I don't think I managed to turn on I don't think I managed to turn it on. Maybe I did. I don't know. Anyway, so we do a lot of administrative advocacy, and for Joel and me, what that looks like is we are in constant contact with the department to make sure that when we hear from programs or parents that things aren't working, that they know what's going on, that we are trying to solve problems on behalf of our families and our programs. So that's a large part of our work. And as parents, you fit into that as well, because you know, one of the things that we try to do is we try to make sure that they are bringing parents in a lot of their decision-making processes. So they will have task forces and, you know, special groups and decision-making, and we want them to be bringing parents in to have a parent voice at all of those tables. And like at least 80% of the time when I go to meetings and there's parents there, those parents are present and past parent ambassadors. Wouldn't you say that's true, April? Yeah. And that is because they know that parent ambassadors are really, they're well informed about the system. They are not afraid to speak up. They know who they're representing. They're representing parents, they're representing wherever you happen to be, right? And that they can provide a strong voice for parents. All right, the other thing that we do is collaboration, and that is basically that we sort of provide the connection between and the opportunity for programs, staff and directors and parents to get together and learn from each other. And that is happens in director meetings and you know, online, and we do some calls, and so that they know that they're not trying to reinvent the wheel out there in their own little town. They can learn from what other people are doing. One example of that right now is that every Monday we have a COVID-19 call so that everybody can be in the same virtual room and hear updates from both the state and the federal folks, and then talk to each other about what they're doing that works and what questions they're having that about things that aren't working. Hopefully my battery won't run out here. So we also work with a lot of other organizations. We are not alone, and one of the reasons why we have been so successful in our advocacy is that we work with other organizations. The most important one is actually a coalition of organizations called the Early Learning Action Alliance. And the Early Learning Action Alliance, it's currently housed within the Children's Alliance. And what that is it's really a group of all of the different early learning groups who get brought together to make decisions and to create a common agenda, a legislative agenda on the state level. So, so that instead of going into the legislature and saying, and being independent and just saying, okay, we're with the State Head Start ECAP Association. We need this for ECAP. We don't care about this other stuff. Please give us money for ECAP. What we do in the Early Learning Action Alliance, and we serve both our organization, WSA, and the parent ambassadors serve on the steering committee. And we, oops, sorry, it's just plugging in my phone. So we guide their process when they decide what is going to be on the annual advocacy agenda. And that is so when we have things that come up on down in Olympia that let's say that there's a bill that's about foster care or kinship care or something. That's something that might be on our agenda. But what happens is then maybe all these other, we can talk together every week, and then all these other groups can also send people to testify, or they can sign in favor of the bill, so that it doesn't just look like something that we care about. It looks like something that the entire early learning community cares about, because we are much stronger if we are in a big group. All of these other groups, Children's Alliance, Save the Children Action Network, Moms Rising, and Child Care Aware, they are all part of that coalition, as well as are many, 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 many other organizations, including big ones like the SEIU 925, who represents family child care, the Child Care Centers Association, the United Ways, the Fight Crime, Invest in Kids. There's a whole bunch of them, maybe 30 or 40 of them, I think.
72.
72, that's what I meant. I didn't mean 30 or 40, that's completely inadequate. I meant 72. The other thing I would say about these other associations, these other organizations that do advocacy work, is that there may also be opportunities for you guys to do work with them as well. If they have an advocacy agenda that aligns with what you are interested in, you may be able to work with them as well, especially after you leave Parent Ambassadors. We will have things for alumni to do, but these guys are also great as well, and they will provide opportunities for you to do advocacy in an ongoing way. Questions? All right, Parent Ambassadors. So way back when, way a long time ago, 2009, or basically 2008, we started talking. Joel came to us in 2007. Joel and I started about the same time, and he had been talking to a parent here in Washington State for a couple of years about setting up some sort of parent leadership program. Because what we were seeing was that, you know, their advocacy is a part of the performance standards for Head Start and for ECAP, parent advocacy, you know, giving parents the skills to advocate for themselves. But what we were seeing is that we had a whole bunch of parents who were really jazzed up and who would come to Advocacy Day and meet with their legislators, and then they would be thinking, what's next? What else can I do? And there really wasn't a lot of opportunity for parents to really deepen their skills in advocacy, and for us to have a group of parents who could then do some of that work I talked about before, like serving on statewide planning groups, or you know, testifying in Olympia, other things like that, right? Being, you know, talking to the Office of Head Start out in DC to try to, or the Office of Child Care about issues that are really important to parents. So, so we created the Parent Ambassadors Program. And the first year, we really did not know what we were doing, but it went fine. Every year we've learned more. April here was part of year 2 of Parent Ambassadors. Sonia and Maricela were both Parent Ambassadors in, Sonia, maybe 3 or 4?
I was 3, Maricela was 5.
Right. I never remember these numbers, but those guys do. So anyway, we've been training parents up since 2009 and working in partnership. And I think that we get more out of it almost than you guys do, because our work is so much stronger when we have strong relationships with parents and the people who are receiving the services and the people who are closest to the ground. So we thank you for being willing to do this. It really, really helps us. Over the years, our parents have really advocated and had successes. We've doubled the size of ECAP, expanded early Head Start and Head Start. We got 12-month eligibility for child care subsidies, and I will say that that whole thing really started when we had a whole bunch of parents who went out to Washington, D.C. to talk to the Office of Child Care and the President's aide at the White House about the importance of child care subsidies. And the way that it used to work is that you would get, you know, you would get your subsidy for 3 months, and then you would have to do all the paperwork again, and it would, you know, so sometimes you would get cut off, and then it was just a huge, ridiculous situation, and kids would lose care, and it was terrible for children and for families. And so the federal government really took it on, and they started recommending 12-month eligibility, and then we were able to get a bill passed here to try it out, and then it was just a huge success for Parent Ambassadors. They also advocate around rate increases for programs, childcare and the ECAP Head Start, Early Head Start, getting student parents the ability to get childcare subsidies without having to work 20 hours a month, and expanded eligibility for ECAP as well. So those are some of the things that Parent Ambassadors have really weighed in on, and you know, they weigh in by organizing parents in their area, by visiting, by organizing site visits for legislators, and we're setting up meetings in the district, coming to Olympia, testifying in Olympia at hearings, writing letters to the editor, and voting and getting other people to vote, all of those things. Any questions? All right. I think this might be my last slide, and I wanted to talk a little bit about our advocacy priorities and how we decide that. So, you know, a Head Start association usually is advocating primarily for Head Start. So they're not doing very much on the state level, and they're not doing too much on issues that are not Head Start, right? That is not the case here. Part of that is because we are unique and include both Head Start and ECAP, but it's also because of parent ambassadors and because of our really strong philosophy around making sure that our association reflects the needs of the families that we serve. So when we are deciding during a year about what we will be prioritizing for advocacy, either at the state level or at the federal level, we talk to our members. We do surveys, we talk at director meetings and at our WSA meetings, we have calls, etc. We talk to parent ambassadors about it because you're the parents who we know the best. So we talk. We consult with all our coalition because we want to be in alignment with our coalition, and we talk to our lobbyists because we want to make sure that what we do is has at least a prayer of passing. It's depressing if you are trying something that people are going to get mad about. But you know, we also have to push the lobbyists because the lobbyists only want to do things that are they often are very risk averse. They don't want to annoy the legislators. They don't want to ask for too much. We usually want to ask for too much. And so that's how we get what we get, right? Because it's always a balancing act. And then we talk to our board of directors to get sign off on what we're doing because they are our supervisors and they are the final word about what we support in terms of our advocacy agenda. Any questions? All right, well, that's the basics of WSA.
Thank you, Katie. Does anybody have questions about WSA for Katie, about parent ambassadors and WSA, about parent ambassadors in general, based on the information you just heard from Katie?
There's a question in the chat box from Catherine that says, if we want to work on a bill, can we contact any legislators or only ours?
Well, you are the most likely to be successful when you talk to your own, but you are allowed to contact any legislators and the governor, of course, as well.
And I guess, Catherine, I would ask, are you talking about one that you are currently aware of or creating one? I think the circumstances can look different based on what outcome you're trying to work with.
Yeah.
I know you're muted, so you
Yeah.
can answer in the chat if you would like.
I'm trying to find the chat, but it's not letting me see it.
Byron, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Excuse me. I was just wondering, let's say there's multiple things that we may need to advocate for, and they both have equal importance. Would that be like divvied along the ambassadors to work on? How would that, something like that work?
Yeah, so usually, so this is a question that every lobbyist has to deal with too, right? Because they have multiple clients. Usually they try to keep the meetings, and we try to keep meetings focused, right? So if in fact we are bringing you to Olympia to do advocacy around early learning issues, we're going to want you to talk about early learning issues while you're there. But that's not to say that you can't also be advocating around, criminal justice issues or whatever that is. Those meetings might be separate. Or sometimes we'll throw something in at the end. Oh, I'm also really interested in this. I really hope that you would think about that. But in terms of your work as a parent ambassador, we are focused on early learning advocacy. What would you say about that, April?
Yeah, I would agree. And I think it's also important to figure out, if you have two competing issues, how they might interact with each other, or how, when budget negotiations come down, there's a lot of prioritizing that comes into place. And as working with the coalition and as WSA, we do a lot of that to help you navigate some of that stuff. So there's always a way to advocate for more than one thing. You just have to be careful in how you talk about it when you talk about it.
Yep. But I will say, every year I'm down in Olympia and I see parent ambassadors from previous years who are testifying on bills that are certainly unrelated to ECAP and Head Start and childcare. They may be related to the K-12 system and discipline, or they may be related to work schedules or things like that. All sorts of different things that affect low-income people. It's great. It's just that in the meeting where you're there as a parent ambassador, you are during your parent ambassador year. It should probably be one of the many early learning issues, or a combination of the many early learning issues that we will be there for.
Does that answer your question, Byron?
It does, but how about multiple items within early learning?
Pardon?
How about if there's like multiple items that we need to advocate for within early learning?
Yeah, there is never a meeting that I go into that I am not advocating for multiple things within early learning. It is absolutely what we do. And, if you look at our, you were at Advocacy Day, right? And we had a list of things that we were there for, right? We were going to talk about ECAP rates in the Complex Needs Fund. We were going to talk about infant toddler rates for childcare. We were going to talk about copay for parents in the subsidy system. So those things, they're all early learning issues. And one of the things about a coalition is, and this is true of parent ambassadors as well. So when we talk about the Early Learning Action Alliance, the way that we decide on what is going on the collective legislative agenda for the Early Learning Action Alliance is that at least 2 members of the steering committee have to have this as one of their top priorities, right? But what that means is that there's a whole lot of people in that coalition who do not have this as their top priority. So when I go into a meeting, I am going to talk first about a state meeting, right? I'm going to talk first about ECAP. I'm going to talk second about childcare, or I might talk about foster care or kinship care, depending on what's on our agenda. And then I might talk about other things, professional development for childcare or something. I have my own priorities, but when the Child Care Centers Association goes in, they're going to talk about professional development for providers, and they're going to talk about rates, so they're going to have a different list of priorities. We all will. You will. Each parent ambassador will have a different list of priorities, but within the early learning world.
Thanks.
And your story, Byron, it may be that the story that you want to tell that is the most important to you on that day is your ECAP story, or your childcare story, or your story about, whatever. So it's different from person to person as well, but we have a framework of issues that we all are sort of looking at.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I would add to that too is Like Katie saying, you have different stories for different occasions. You have different stories you want to highlight when you're talking to different legislators, right? So you might be talking about ECAP altogether, but when you talk to one legislator, you want to talk about return on investment. And when you talk to another one, you want to talk about parent impact, right? So it's all about knowing your audience, which we'll talk a lot about, you know, over the next couple of months and the year, and helping you guys really understand the culture that we work with in the legislature. So that plays into it a lot.
Yeah, you know, a few years ago, a couple years ago, when we did, let's see, we really thought through that issue of having different focus in different places, and so we put together specialized fact sheets depending on who we might be going to visit. So if I'm going to see a legislator who is really, really interested in homelessness, where that is really a high priority for them, I might bring this fact sheet to them, or you might tell us the homelessness story that you have about somebody in your neighborhood. But if I'm going to talk to a you know, a Republican who's really more concerned about the economy than about low-income kids, I might bring this one, right, about the importance of high-quality care for workers and for success in school and how that affects our economy. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways that you can talk about things.
So Catherine has a question. She had a question: if we want to work on a bill, can we contact any legislators or only ours? More like creating one. And I asked her to explain, and she says, so I feel like Claire Wilson might be more receptive to tightening laws about messaging minors for sexual intent than my legislators, especially since one is friends with the family that is my inspiration. Katie, do you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, you know, one of the things that we do in the coalition also is that when we have a bill that we're trying to get done, we talk as a group about who should be the prime sponsor, who should we talk to. So absolutely, like it is usually good to have somebody who is on the committee that it is going to run through, for example. Or that has some experience or passion around that. If in fact your own legislator, maybe not the one who's friends with the perpetrator here, that seems like not a good thing, but maybe the other one, you have three, that would be a place to start if you think that they have anything, any alignment with what you're thinking about. But, you know, I would also reach out to advocacy groups that do what you're talking about, because those advocacy groups probably have a lobbyist, and they could give you some advice about about who to reach out to on that particular topic.
The other option is to look for a bill that already exists around that and see who the sponsor was for those bills as well.
Yeah.
And we, you know, this year has been a little bit different, but one of the things that we do is have you each identify a goal, an advocacy goal and a personal goal for this program. So if that's something that you're thinking about doing, keep that in mind, and we'll be working with you guys over the next couple of weeks to explain that process and figure out how we get moving on that without being able to meet face to face. So just so you are all aware.
Yep.
Any other questions? Awesome. Well, thank you, Katie.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Thank you. Bye, Renee.
Yeah, and good luck. Good luck along with your children.
you see Byron
Thank
had a
you.
question?
I'm
Byron?
sure it is a lot louder than my cats.
Yeah, I'll trade you, Katie.
Did you guys see Byron has a question? So Byron, when we WSA and the National Head Start Association and other folks like that usually make our fact sheets. So that would not be something you do on your own. We're here to support
No.
you with that, and we all want those messages to align. So it's almost important that we don't do them on our own.
Yeah. Yeah, we do our fact sheets here.
Definitely reach out to your parent coordinator if you have specific questions or things that you're thinking about that you want to know more about, get more information on, or that partners with your story or personal experiences. It's kind of all what we've been leading up to. So reach out to your coordinators if you have more questions.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Stay healthy.
Have a good one.
You too. Byron, give me a call whenever you're available so we can chat.
How about now? It's now good?
Okay, that'd be great.
All right, I gotta find your number because I don't think I have it saved yet, but I'll call you in the next 2 minutes.
Okay.
All right.